Buddy, hello gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. Alright, so I played this game 10 minutes per side per game. Is there? I think we went to. The game took a little bit over 10 minutes, if I recall correctly. We'll see. Um, and so I had the white pieces. Let's get going. I felt in this game like I was a little bit. I was slightly worse for a good portion of the game, and that I found a couple good moves that broke me free. And it's nice to see that on this progress chart here, on the evaluation chart, that's kind of what Torch 4 uh, thought as well. So I played the Queen's Gambit. My friends say he's played d4 in this game. I've been playing a little bit of d4 recently. It's fun. Um, some normal developing moves, and I'll break out of that with uh, pawn to f3. Now, pawn to f3 contains a threat that's easily dealt with if identified, and the threat is c takes d5. Now, in some cases, the knight will take d5, and I'll push e4 and have forked black's bishop and knight. And I think there's probably no way out of that fork. Let's take a look. That's a good idea. Can black botch this? Like some kind of natural move. Knight to c6, and then I think e4 actually is the right move. Not quite. Okay. Liquidate on the d file first. That was the idea, right? Yes. No. That was the idea all along. Excuse me. And then with pawn to e4, it's still not working. Take the knight, and the queen takes. Now the fork on e4 should make sense. There we go. Alright, well, hey, thank you all. Thank you all who are watching. I wouldn't have reviewed this like this. So now I know the correct way to proceed if I am going to play pawn to f3 in the future on move 4 in some version of the Queen's Gambit Declined. Good natural developing moves. e4. So it drops up. Are we relatively accurate overall before I go through the whole thing here? Yeah, okay. And e4 is a mistake. My opponent liquidates on c3 accurately and correctly, and then captures on e4. Just some play. Knight to e5 seems to be a little bit much because after exchanges, and moving away, my protection of the e5 pawn. I don't know. Eventually, what I'm thinking, eventually g2's got to budge because this bishop has to get into the game, has to develop at some point, and that will leave bishop takes g2. Also attacking my rook on h1, so when I slide him over, the bishop can retreat without wasting all that much time in terms of tempo, without wasting initiative all that badly. Although then the rook might have a attack on g7, depending on where the g3 bishop. I think we had played him to g3 during the variation, so he's in the way. Bishop to e2. White is playing to try to create complications. Here we have a little hiccup from black with f6, distracting the knight away to f6 on the recapture. And white's going to pick up the c7 pawn. Trade of rooks, which makes sense. Ahead in material, my opponent's ahead in material, even if it's only by a point. And then bishop to e5. White launches some sort of attack with bishop to h5 check. I don't think it's going to be accurate. What I want to say about this, there's a lot going on the board. We have, from a human perspective, this is difficult to calculate. We have to calculate through potential breaks of the pin. We have to be aware if there's any piece that's currently protecting the rook that is involved in the black rook that's involved in the pin. We have to there's a lot actually going on this board. It's not an overcrowded board, but tactically there's serious considerations. So but through that, I'm kind of justifying my move. Bishop to h5 check is not all that bad a move if it's maybe inaccurate, but jostles things around a bit here. Force my opponent to find the best move, and it looks like black is a pawn ahead. They can grab another pawn soon. Easier, they can grab another pawn soon. And bishop to e8 is a bad mistake, so I pounced on that. And then king takes e8. It's only bishop e8 was only a bad mistake because of an eventual rook to f6. Now black has problems. We're attacking. The rook on f6 is forking pawns on both e6 and h6. And even if g takes h4, then there's a time where the rook will capture on h6 and also be attacking the other h pawn. So this pawn situation here, the pawn structure on black's king side is very badly shaken. It is white's turn. In addition to that, sorry about that, it's white's turn to move, and yeah, we're gonna claim a pawn or two and make a game out of this. G4 is not quick enough, pretty much anyhow, because I moved rook to h7 rather, and that's a check. So rook to h7 check. The king moves to f8, and before we need to worry about whether or not the king will be faster than the pawn, and he will be, before we need to worry about any of that, white has the strongest threat of rook to b8 check and then capturing. But rook to g7 first, trying to get his king as close to the invading pawn as possible. And this is kind of like a little nuance here to show your opponent that yes, indeed, I understand the winning continuation for my own side. Under my beliefs, what I understand now is that by playing rook to b8, I'm showing I know the winning continuation. The king moves in front. I give the check, and then when the king goes to g6 to try to get closer to the pawn, I show that rook takes g7 check is still winning, and black's king still must recapture on g7, so it transposes. Thank you. I've been thinking of that word. The position transposes here with white to move. I decided the best way to show the win is with king to f2 first, showing that that if I'm challenged on g3, I can just capture. Or even if, my opponent gets his king nearby or somehow with some crazy variation, I can also block on g2. And probably not g1, that's not informed, but still technically could be played. And when I do that, as we saw, capturing the rooks, and then f2, and then it moves closer to try to help this guy. It's you know it's a desperate attempt. There are two passed pawns for white on the board, and they are a long ways apart from each other. It means that the king cannot cover both promotions. The king will be overtaxed to cover both promotions, and either the c4 pawn or the h4 pawn are going to promote. So we start one, then once he goes towards the one, it's not all that serious. Which in this position with white to move, it's not all that serious. Whether you move c6 first or h5. The king's closer to the h file, but they're just about the same. I mean, by the time if I move pawn to h5, by the time the king gets to capturing the h pawn, this guy's already done and dusted, promoted, and capturing opponent pawns as a queen. So my opponent resigned here. It was a respectful moment to resign. I enjoyed this game. Yeah. So thank you to my opponent, and this will be our last set part of this broadcast. I don't think I'll be broadcasting later today. So thank you to my opponent, Flying Dallas Car. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.